Hello everybody, I am Zenith and welcome back once again to the Disney Debate. It is with greatest pride and deepest pleasure that I welcome you once again to our humble podcast. Once again, joining me is Kat McBerry. How's it going, Kat?
Yodelahee-hoo. I'm doing good. I'm on top of a mountain. Woo! No, not really.
We're on top of the world!
Woohoo! Actually, no, I'm not. I would be terrified. I would legit be terrified. So, yes, hello everyone.
Today we are talking about a film once again that we didn't really have any experience with from the past. We didn't really know what to expect of it until we saw it. And the basic idea I got when I just skimmed through the file when I first got it was just, it's mountain climbing movie. Okay. So, but it's a little bit more interesting than that. But before we get into the film itself, I just want to say, like, I do have a bit of a background with climbing. I've climbed several mountains myself, and I used to go rock climbing at the gym. So I do know quite a bit about mountain climbing. And my father actually went to like some serious, legit mountain climbing places. Like, he climbed mountains where there are snowy crevasses and stuff like that, and we have pictures of him in said crevasses.
Nice. Yeah, I commend anybody who could actually do that. Like, I mean, I used to rock climb when I was younger, but yeah, I'm too much of a chicken shit to actually do it in real life. So yeah, like, good on you and your dad for actually doing that. Like, very commendable, because mountain climbing, I heard, is not exactly the easiest. Especially if,
It depends which mountain. It really depends which mountain you go on. The mountains that we started on in Boy Scouts were like Mount McKinley, Mount Monadnock, and those have trails. Like, those aren't like legitimate like sheer face mountain climbs. They have trails.
Okay.
So it really depends where you go. But yeah, I really commend my dad because the stuff that you see them doing in this film, I have seen him do. Like, he has the crampons, he's climbing down sheer faces. Like, it's not easy.
Yeah, especially like this is like old-timey mountain climbing, so they don't have like, they don't have like the built-in harnesses, like they don't attach anything to the side to hoist people up. Like, it is all through like their own like sheer strength that they manage to get themselves up. Like, all it is just a rope between like 3 to 4 people. And like that is hardcore. Like, really hardcore, and all they have to hold them up is just like their sharp cleats and their own grip, and it's like, whoa, just whoa.
I'm really impressed by a lot of the stuff that they show in this film. And I think what really kind of sets it apart is that these were people actually mountain climbing. Like, the stuff that you see them do in the film is them actually going out and doing it. I believe you told me like just a minute ago um, that they had to take 6 hours to climb to the specific spots that they needed to
Hmm.
do for filming.
Yeah, like, the surprising thing is that you would think a film like this, be with it mostly taking place on the mountains, they'd like most of it would be like sets or something. No, they actually went to Switzerland, and they actually went on real mountains and filmed like on location, and it took them like several months, and in various degrees of weather and seasons. Like, what I didn't like particularly notice it at first, but they're like, you could tell that there are like different terrains and different like portions of snow that cover everything. So the fact that that like both the cast and crew had to put themselves through actual terrain and actual weather changes to film this is really damn impressive. Like, especially for the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, and why I wanted to really start with the mountain climbing aspect is because we wanted to show you that uh, while there are some problems that we'll talk about later on in the film, we are very impressed at what they were able to do, knowing from my background with climbing how hard it can be and how long ago this was without that proper equipment. Like they went out and did it, and I am impressed by that. So the film is about this boy named Rudy, and
Rudy. Sorry.
and and Rudy is the son of a legendary mountain climber. Basically, the job for many people in the village is to either be a porter to, show people up a mountain, or a guide. And essentially, you need at least two people to climb the mountain with your customer. So you have your porter, you have your guide, and you have your customer who wants to climb the mountain. And this village, I believe it's like Switzerland or Sweden.
It's in Switzerland. It's definitely in Switzerland.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, this is a small village in Switzerland, and it's built around, it's a small village, so there's many different types of jobs, but the most respected over there seems to be the porters and the guides, because you see them in the bars, they're getting all this praise. And Rudy's father was supposedly one of the best climbers ever, the only person to climb to the top of a mountain that they call the Citadel. But this mountain is based on an actual mountain called the Matterhorn, which you may have heard of if you've gone to Disneyland and, you've seen that ride. So the Citadel is supposedly the hardest mountain to climb. Most people in the village think it's cursed. It's unclimbable since his father had to, pretty much stop and go back to save his customer. And in doing so, he crippled himself, basically.
Yeah, basically, like, they got up to a certain point in the mountain, and then, of course, when you get on a mountain that high, you have to face really harsh weather and avalanches and whatnot. And unfortunately, his father ended up giving his life in order to save another. And since then, in the story, nobody else in town had gone up that mountain. And that had been for, like, they said about 16 years. So basically, like, all the climbers in town are afraid of this mountain, except for Rudy, because Rudy, of course, mountain climbing is in his blood, and his big goal throughout the film is basically to climb the Citadel and to fulfill his father's dream of reaching the top. So this is basically, like sort of an underdog story, because nobody believes he can do it, and nobody wants him to do it, especially his mother and uncle, who are afraid that he's going to meet the same fate as his father, which, if you ever watched films like Everest, is completely understandable.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of stuff like Everest, my dad's friend, Dr. Tim Warren, actually climbed Mount Everest.
Wow.
But he didn't climb it the first time. The thing is, with these harsh mountains, something can go in the way. And so these people make multiple attempts because if anything particular goes wrong, they have to turn back. I think Dr. Tim took maybe 3 times to do Everest.
I'd imagine it must take at least 10 attempts just to be able to get to at least a point near the top, like, given how harsh it is.
Exactly. Like these mountains, we must stress, are very hard to climb. It's not something that it's not something like Mount Monadnock where you can just casually walk up the trail, and I've done that. This is stuff that, like, their winds could knock over rocks. There are avalanches. There's wild animals. There's a lot of things and factors that go into it, especially the cold. And it's very understandable from the beginning of this film, both positions of the people involved. Like, I can completely understand where Rudy is coming from, and at the same time, while his uncle is being a dick about it, I can understand why he and his mother don't want him to climb, because I have literally seen people do this in real life. Because, like I said, my dad's friend Dr. Tim tried Everest like 3 times, and I think after the second, his wife and his kid was just like, well, maybe we want to not do it again, because every single attempt is more dangerous. Because if you can get to a certain point and come back alive, that's all well and good. But if you want to go further next time, it's going to be even more dangerous the further you go.
Yeah, I honestly don't really see the appeal that much other than if you're like an adrenaline junkie. Cause yeah, it's like honestly, like what I heard, Everest is just littered with bodies that nobody's bothered to recover because the atmosphere itself is just so inhospitable, and just rescuing the dead bodies, like there's no point. And pretty much it becomes like a like a milestone. It's like, oh good, you got as far as this guy before he died, and you got as far as this guy before he died. It's like at some point you're like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like I get it's all about conquering the impossible and going the distance, but after a certain point you're just like, nah, I'm just gonna go enjoy life and not freeze to death.
It all depends. Some mountains I find it's just once you get to the top and you can see everything below you, it's just an amazing feeling. Like, the views on some of these mountains are incredible. When I went to climb, there's one that was a little bit harder. It wasn't a sheer face, but it was quite a bit higher than Monadnock. And we looked down and we saw Monadnock or McKinley. We basically saw the mountains that we had climbed before, and they were way below us. And it's just kind of a strange feeling of, we got to this point. It's we took the time, we prepared, and we conquered this. And I got like a t-shirt at the top saying, I conquered this mountain. It's For a small mountain like that, that's a big accomplishment, I think. And like, you start to feel just you're on the top of the world, like no one else matters at that point. As for Everest, I can only imagine it's the same near the top, although the air is very, very thin and I'm not sure how far you can see, but I would imagine it would be the same kind of feeling.
I guess. I'm just saying, there are other things you could do to sort of make you feel the same way without, putting your life in danger. And that's apparently what happens in this movie, because there are several attempts at climbing the mountain, and each of them involve people almost getting hurt or dying. Not graphically, mind you, but still.
At the same time, though, they don't attempt to climb the Citadel until 2/3 of the way into the film.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time building up this mountain and like how dangerous it is and how like nobody should be going on it, and it's like these people are doing it against all odds. Like in a way I can respect that they were trying to drive it in that, hey, this is a really dangerous mountain, and delivering on that in the climax. The only thing is that the pacing leading up to it just is really slow, and sometimes it makes you forget that, oh yeah, we're supposed to be mountain climbing in this, aren't we?
Yeah, because, like, Rudy is a dishwasher in the village because his uncle doesn't want him to get anywhere near the mountains. So we have to spend that initial bit of him conversing with people about how he doesn't want to be a dishwasher. And then we go to the climbing, and then there's a portion in the middle where there's a dance that doesn't need to happen, but it's there because Disney likes doing their dances mid-film. Um, in fact, there was no musical numbers aside from like the background of this dance.
Yeah, and that's a thing that kind of like that it kind of brings the film down a bit, is its background music. And I don't just mean like, music. I mean like just like, sound effects and like the general like atmosphere music. It is like really inappropriately placed.
The sound mixing just overall is bad. We want to stress that the copy that we saw was from a pretty bad VHS rip. Basically, the picture was great, but we could not find like a legitimate copy of the film, and the audio that we found in this one was very, very low. So we had to jack up the sound quite a bit, and we noticed every bit of the sound mixing because of it. Um, there are large portions of the film where the soundtrack is just silent while they're climbing. There's no tension when it should be tense. And there are portions of the soundtrack where it's like they give the stings of tension when nothing happens.
Yeah, it's like someone says, "You will never climb that mountain." Da 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 da. And then it's like, oh, they falls off a cliff, and he's like in a precarious situation. Silence. It's like I know this is like the older time where they didn't quite get, sound mixing and stuff down, but I mean even then we've seen it much better in earlier films, and in this it is so damn noticeable, and it's to the point where one of the things that they unfortunately would do with like old films is that whenever an actor talks away from the camera, they have the actors pretty much dub over their lines just so you could hear them. In this one, it was like really noticeable. Like the tone changed like every other sentence that the actors were like speaking. Like at times I even thought somebody else was dubbing the actors just because the tones were so different.
You can really noticeably tell, especially when you get to Captain Wynter. Captain Wynter is a person that is he's considered one of the best mountain climbers everywhere. He's not from the village. He's supposed to be an Englishman. However, they say he's conquered 50 mountains, which is a feat. Like, that's a big deal. But Rudy comes across Captain Winters when he's out just looking at the mountains. He's just like wandering around, and he finds Captain Winters in a crevasse. And from the moment Captain Winters like appears on screen, you can tell that he's dubbed a little bit differently than everyone else.
Yeah, like it confused me because they said that he's like an Englishman, but his accent is like it doesn't seem English. I thought he was like an American at first. I had to actually look up the actor just to confirm. Like I don't know if he was trying to put on a different accent or if somebody dubbed him, but he just sounds really weird. Like not completely noticeable, like obnoxious weird, just different.
Yeah. So Captain Winters was wandering around, and apparently he was too busy looking at the mountain that he didn't look where he was going, and he fell in the crevasse.
The world's greatest mountain climber.
And the other stupid thing is that in addition to this, he wasn't dressed for mountain climbing. No one is. He's dressed in a business suit.
I don't understand some of the costume choices in this. Like on the one hand, they have like traditional Swiss outfits, and then others like they have them up in just regular suits. And even when they're climbing, like I get that the mountain's not supposed to be as cold as like other mountains are, but even then there's still snow and they're still at a high altitude. You'd think they dress a little more warmly than they do in this film.
And even if you think it's going to be cold, like even small mountains, the wind picks up near the top. So you're getting all of that wind chill and the wind speed. So that's going to dig into you. It's going to feel like 10 to 20 degrees colder than what it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So we have them meeting, and in order to rescue him from this crevasse, Rudy takes off his shirt and his coat, and he's there shirtless, and he doesn't even appear cold while he's picking up this guy from a crevasse that he probably could have like climbed out of if he just had a tool like an axe or something like that. It's just below head height. Like, he could probably use his crampons, just take them off and use them to climb the side of this crevasse.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have an opportunity for him and Rudy to meet and form a friendship and, get the movie started.
Uh um
Also, I think Rudy has Canadian blood in him, given that he's able to, do this whole thing shirtless in the snow.
Maybe he's Phalus.
Yeah, probably.
From here, you pretty much have every bit set up for the film. You basically have everything you need for them to go forth and climb the Citadel. So you have Rudy saving Captain Winters, and because of that, his uncle lets him be a porter. And that should have led into either them climbing the Citadel or getting ready to climb the Citadel. What happens in the middle of the film is kind of it's padding, but it's not movie padding.
Padding, 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 padding.
This is literature padding, and I see it all the time when a writer does not know what to do with his characters until the end. Basically, the book that this was based on, the author knew where he wanted to start and where he wanted to end, but he created all these minor conflicts that don't really matter in the middle, just so he could get from point A to point B. I've seen it so many times with older books where, I keep bringing this up on the show, but there was this one book I read when I was little. It was about an Egyptian who had this problem, and he was like a stone cutter, or not a stone cutter, but like he was a sculptor, and he wanted to like do something big and whatnot. And there was all this like minute, pointless stuff that happens for like 5 or 6 chapters to the point where I started getting bored. And then at the end, it starts to pick up again. It's bad writing.
Yeah, they could have easily cut like half an hour out of this movie, because this is what, like a 2-hour movie? And
Yeah. This was a longer film than we're used to.
yeah, it was like almost 2 hours, and I do feel like they could have cut about half an hour out of it. Like, I get they were trying to like I said, build up the importance of the danger of the Citadel, and then kind of show Rudy's like journey through being a simple dishwasher to eventually becoming like a basic mountain climber, and then working his way up to being a guide on the Citadel. Like, I get they were trying to do that. I just felt that it could have the pacing could have been a lot better. They could have cut certain things out and just make it more concise and get more to the point of why people watch this movie, and that's to, watch people climb mountains.
At the same time, though, the climbing mountains in the middle of the film is kind of padding. Basically what they do is his uncle agrees to let him be a porter, not for the Citadel, but just for a small mountain. And they go out and they spend a good 20 minutes just climbing this mountain before the next bit of plot happens, where they stop and Rudy decides to go ahead a little bit further because he thinks he found a better trail. And he gets stuck on the side of the mountain, and they have to rescue him. This plot point is completely forced, and you can tell why they did it, so that they could add conflict, so they don't immediately go to the Citadel. So you have this mountain climbing padding, you have him trying to trailblaze ahead, and then failing, and then they come back, and they said, oh no, you're not going to be a porter anymore, you're not even going to be a guy, you're going to stick to be a dishwasher. And the person he's working for says, come on, I'll show you how to climb, we'll teach you how to be a better porter. And so he and the guy go out, and he teaches him how to climb for a good half hour of the film. And then after the dance and after all of this stuff, he lies and he goes to the Citadel and it's just like it. A lot of this stuff could have been cut.
Yeah, definitely. At least trimmed down a bit. Like, I get they had to, give him some proper mountain climbing training just for it to make sense, because up until that point, they pretty much show that the kid sneaks off during work in order to climb mountains just for his own, like, enjoyment. So they kind of had to, like, give him a bit of training with, like, an actual climber just to, have it make sense that, how he's able to climb the citadel, like both on his own and with a group. But everything in between, like around that, like they could have been way more concise. Like definitely.
Yeah, they could have either made it more concise, or they could have cut down on some things, or they could have just paced it better. Like, there are interesting plot ideas, but inevitably they're not going anywhere. Because, like I said, this is ultimately padding for the story. Um, there's so much padding that the girl who's supposed to be his love interest, we don't know that she's supposed to be his love interest until halfway through the film.
They kind of make it a little obvious she's supposed to be because she appears at the beginning and she gives him that look, that most girls give, like, "Ooh, it's my crush. I'm gonna do whatever I can to make him happy," type look.
I mean, yes, I can get that, but they don't really build up to the point where he's just like, "Oh, you're my girl now." Like it just kind of comes out of nowhere that he's like, "Oh, well, there's this other guy who's stealing your affections. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to prove him wrong or something like that." Because they already have kind of an interesting relationship in the beginning. You would think that that would be enough because they have to put in a rival for him, a climbing rival that isn't even really a rival, because at the end of the film, like, the guy doesn't get his comeuppance. He's just like, "Oh, good job, Brody." Like he's supposed to be a rival, like in Darby O'Gill, but he's not a rival at all.
That's the weird thing. The love story in this, like, kind of mimics the same love story in the two films that the actors are from, both in Darby O'Gill and Light in the Forest. Because what happened in Light in the Forest, the kid sort of develops a friendship, eventual like love interest in the girl, and of course the whole the issue with him getting with her is her nasty overbearing uncle. And then of course with the girl in Darby O'Gill, she's in love with like the guy who's taking over her house, but at the same time has this love interest who, is kind of the Gaston of the village and is trying to like move in on her. It's pretty much the same thing in this film, except that the rival is just there to be an obstacle and to like motivate the main guy to be like, "Oh, hey, I should probably move my ass in starting a relationship with you." And that's it. Like, it's kind of the same thing, but it's just done way lazier.
They don't do anything with it. Like, this guy appears all of 2 scenes, and then he comes in at the end. And it's not like he's antagonistic. He's a good guy. And that's the stupid thing. Like, they just don't like him for some reason. And I forget what his name was. That's
I
how
think it was
barely he
Klaus.
appears in the. Oh yeah,
It,
Klaus. Klaus
yeah.
makes more sense. Um, so Klaus, he's a mountain climber. He's a porter. But Rudy looks at him and he's like, "Klaus, I need to one up Klaus." He's like Dinkelberg. He didn't do anything wrong, but the main character hates him for no reason. And whenever Klaus is brought up, it motivates him to climb more or to do more to win the affections of his girl. And it's so weird. It's so weak.
Especially since, like, by the end, when they finally do kiss, he seems surprised. He's like, "What the? Oh, yeah, we're supposed to get together at the end, aren't we?" It's like they do show like some moments between them. They show that she's clearly interested in that, he kind of is too, even though he's trying not to let on. But it's like by the end, it's like boom, we're together, and they both look surprised. But it's like, we'll just roll with it.
One thing that we should mention, though, is that the actor who plays Rudy is played by the one who played Connor from The Light in the Forest, the lead actor in that. And the actress who plays his girlfriend played the love interest in Darby O'Gill.
Believe it or not, this was not going to be the first or last time that they're shown together on screen. They actually are going to be together again in Swiss Family Robinson. We'll get to that.
Which I have never seen the Swiss Family Robinson, but I tried reading that book and that was boring as all hell. It like Journey to the Center of the Earth is a great book, but Swiss Family Robinson just no. um I will note that Rudy is better acted, much better acted than Connor was in The Light in the Forest. Like, Connor back in The Light in the Forest was robotic and uninteresting, and maybe he was asked to be portrayed that way, but it was dull. It didn't mean anything. Like, I didn't feel for him as a character. Rudy is much better acted, and I feel like the actor grew a lot in between these two roles.
Yeah, that he. Again, I think it's just because of the different characters he played. Because the first one, he basically went from like, someone who was taken from his home who acted like an asshole to everyone to someone who eventually accepted his changed place. And even though there's like other like, things mixed in there, like it wasn't very well shown or portrayed. In this one, the character's simple. He's the underdog who dreams of bigger things and who's trying to prove himself. And yeah, hence why I said the Rudy quote earlier. So yeah, definitely. At least in this case, he knows what his character is, and he can better portray the character. Granted, there are times where he comes off as a bit whiny, which given how others treat him, is kind of understandable. But for the most part, I thought he did a really good job in this.
Yeah, he was a much more interesting main character than I thought he had any right to be. That initial, like, 5 minutes where he was introduced as a dishwasher, I didn't really care for him that much. But then as the film went on, I was just like, oh no, this guy's really cool. And a lot of the other characters are really interesting too. I really liked Captain Winters, who he's determined to climb that citadel, and you can see the passion that he has just for climbing mountains, for being the best. And it really shows every time he's on screen that he keeps going. He gets injured a couple of times in the film, and he just keeps on going because he knows that he can do it. And he discourages others because they keep saying, oh no, that's impossible. It's a cursed mountain. He's like, no, you guys, like, this village was founded on people who climb mountains. How can you be scared of this? And he pushes people to do it. So I liked Captain Winters. I liked Rudy. I liked the guy who owns the bed and breakfast, I think, where Rudy washes dishes.
Oh, he's actually the cook.
Oh, the cook. Okay. It's never really specified.
Um, they say it like here and there. It's not officially like said, but yeah, basically like the guy, or I guess mentor, like second mentor in this film, is Teo. He is actually was a mountain climber. In fact, he's the one that Rudy's father died saving. And the thing is, I thought I wasn't gonna like him at first because at the beginning he's like chewing Rudy out, saying, "Oh, you're so irresponsible. You don't wash the dishes good, and I always have to cover up for you." And, rah, rah, rah. And I thought it was gonna be the typical like grumpy old man that bitches and moans throughout the whole film, but he actually like proves to care about the kid, and he clearly wants to repay his father for saving his life, so hence why he teaches Rudy later on how to properly mountain climb. And granted, he still is kind of a grumpy old man, but he actually like legitimately like helps move the film along, and is shown to be a much kinder than he lets on. And then of course at the end, he's the one who actually motivates the rest of the climbers to get off their asses and actually climb the citadel, even if it's just to to meet up with Rudy and the captain. I actually really like his speech that he that he gives to them there, like basically calling them all whiny little bitches that are like too scared to go up the mountain. Like that was a really good moment.
Teo in general, like, I did not think I would like him at first. I didn't even think he would be a major character at first.
Yeah, same here.
And then the more he appears on screen, it's just, oh, you're really cool. Plus, he has this really cool accent that I'm just like, I want to see more of you.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up his the actor, and he's done like a lot of stuff. He was like in a James Bond film. He was in Jason the Argonauts. He was in a lot of stuff. So he's definitely very well acted. Like I especially love how after his speech, even like the girl character is like really impressed, and she's like, "Oh, I wish I could like bottle up that speech and tell my grandchildren about it." I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great metaphor for this."
It's really interesting that this film, which um if I read it as a book, I might be bored with it in the middle. I think it's really saved a lot by these actors, and there's a lot of really well acted characters here that pushes the movie forward. And I never, watching the film, found it boring, even though there was this padding.
Yeah, that's the only thing that really kills the film is the padding and like I said, the few technical aspects of it that are kind of distracting. Like and like you said, I did think everyone was very well acted. The only one I didn't buy too much was the uncle, because he's pretty much there to be the naysayer the entire time, is to say no, you can't do this, or no, I'm gonna take this away, and no, you, I'm gonna make sure you. I'm gonna go to any length possible to make sure you don't do this. And granted, he's kind of justified given what happened to the kid's father and the fact that he pretty much left his sister alone to raise a son. But even then, like, even up to the end of the film, he doesn't really change all that much. He's still a jerk. He's still really, like, grumbly and really, like, sullen. Like, I don't remember any scene in which he actually smiles or acts happy or even says that he's proud of the kid. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he never really praises him, even when he finds his father's route to the top of the mountain. And that climax, like, is really, really well handled, where Rudy finds the secret route to the top of the mountain, and his uncle, Captain Winters, and this other guide, they just go up to the top of the mountain, and they show like the sheer like scale of it, and there's a lot going on there. But even after all that, his uncle just doesn't praise him, and he lets him be a guide, but that's it. I mean, maybe it's because the people in the village are grumpy because the guy who gave him boots before had kind of a grumpy face. But then they show him later, and he's like, he's actually smiling, so I don't know.
yeah, like, it's because like even in movies like Little Mermaid or Moana, where you have the father who does whatever they can to prevent their child from going somewhere dangerous. Like at least by the end, they come to accept that yeah, they should be free to make their own choices, and it was a good thing they acted on those choices. Like they at least acknowledge it and sort of and try to like make up for having doubted them. In this, you don't get that satisfaction. And in fact, it's kind of made worse by the fact that Rudy doesn't even reach the top of the mountain. Like he could have, but one of the guides, this guy who was like from a rival town who was determined to be the first on the mountain, goes ahead, gets injured, and then Rudy has to save his dumbass. Meanwhile, his uncle and the captain go straight up to the top. Like it's kind of a letdown in a way. Like it actually reminds me of Cars at the end, where he could have won the race, but instead he stops to help the car that got wrecked. Like I get what they were going for, to kind of reminiscent of his father having given his life to save someone else, but it's like you build it up all this time only to cop out at the end. and give it to someone who was like give the glory to someone who was way less deserving.
It's a shame. It really is, because his uncle did not deserve to climb that mountain first. Um,
Yeah, especially all the times that the captain asked him up front, "Hey, will you take me to the Citadel?" And he says multiple times, "No, no, I'm not doing it." Like not letting on the fact that he's like a total chicken shit. But yeah, it's not that like the ending's still satisfying because at least he gets recognition for having made it that far and could have potentially been the first. But even then, it's like no, his uncle should not get the glory. He was an asshole.
exactly. I don't even know why like his uncle was involved in that part. Captain Winters is the one who said no, it's Rudy's mountain, and I'm wondering what the uncle's thinking about that. But it's true. Rudy had every right to be the first on that mountain, and it's kind of a silly ending to the film. It's one of those, well, you didn't win, but you still won. It's really silly.
You saved a life, so you win in the end. Okay, that's what the audience came here to see, apparently.
And going back on what you were saying about the father in Moana, he at least had moments where he was smiling and happy, and you could see why people liked him. And in The Little Mermaid, you can see why people were afraid of King Triton. I mean, he's the king, but he did have his moments. Here, the uncle does not have anything.
Yeah, at times I thought he like really hated the kid. It's like, oh, I'm stuck here helping my sister and her kid, and this is all his fault, and I'm just gonna act like a total asshole to him. Like, I don't even think he calls him by his name the entire film. He just calls him the boy, and that's like one of the most disrespectful things you can do to like a child is to just call them by their gender instead of their name. Like, I remember seeing movies and even witnessing in real life like older relatives who do that to like the younger generation, and it's so disrespectful and I hate it. It's like I honestly to God don't remember him at any point actually calling him Rudy. It's like it just makes it all the more frustrating to know that he's the one who gets the glory of having like made it to the top of the mountain. It's like, dude, fuck you.
They even make a plot point of it where he keeps calling Rudy the boy, and Captain Winters is just like, don't call him boy. And he's just like, he is a boy. Well, he's more than that. He's your nephew. Call him by his name.
It's like fine, then I'll call you weak ass bitch. How do you like that? I just feel like I just like I said, I understand what they were doing with the ending to show that, valuing human life over glory is what you're supposed to do, especially in like a when you're in that situation, but I don't know. I would have preferred if like at least he brought the guy back to be healed and then he went back up to the top because they never show that. They just show like the two approaching the top and then it immediately cuts back to the village. It's like
And there's no reason why he couldn't have climbed to the top of the mountain, because Rudy is not injured. So why don't they have like the uncle and Captain Winters come back down? Or because Captain Winters is injured at this point, have the uncle come back down. They climb to the top together. The weather is still good at this point, and it's going to remain that way. Like they keep saying, well, the weather could change. Well, you're at the top of the mountain. You can see when the weather is going to change.
yeah, it's like they put a ticking time like clock on this when there's really no need for it. It's like I was hoping they'd at
Uh,
least have like a nice view from the top of the mountain, like you show like what it's like to actually reach the peak and see everything below you, like give you that feeling. They don't even show that. It's like, okay, we got as far as we were able to film, now let's go back down where it's safe.
yeah, it was really like the climax is good, the ending is rather weak. Um, so we've pretty much covered most of it. We covered the story, we covered the characters and the actors. We covered the lack of music. We covered the technicals. I can't think of anything more to cover.
Yeah, I mean the film's pretty much straightforward, and with the aside from the minor problems, it's actually a very well done film. real locations, trained actors. You go. It says it has mountain climbing. You get mountain climbing. So yeah, we pretty much covered everything, every aspect that you could want in a film. That's what it has. So, and yeah, honestly think this is one of the better films we've seen so far. And it's actually quite a shame that not more people know about this or that it's not even available in DVD. Like, it might be, but I haven't seen a copy.
I think the reason why this is not more well known is the same thing as Tonka. It has a bad title that doesn't describe the film. Third Man on the Mountain barely has anything to do with what's going on in the film. Like, the title is said when they see that there's 3 people climbing the Citadel instead of 2. So the third man on the mountain. Like, they forced that title in there, and it didn't need to be there. Like, it's a stupid ass title.
Yeah, it's like Light in the Forest, which had nothing to do with the plot. It's like one of those. It's like Blue Harvest. It's one of those generic titles you give like a film to start off with when you can't think of anything better.
Like, they could have said, something to do with climbing. Hell, I could come up with a better title in 5 minutes about climbing, like, strap on your boots or something like that. Like, something relating to climbing. The Impossible Mountain. Yeah, the Impossible Mountain.
hmm The Impossible Mountain, conquering the Citadel, or even against all odds. Like anything.
Yeah, and it's a shame because for a film that when we started looking at this decade of films, a lot of them we didn't recognize and didn't know what we were going to get into. But like, this is a legitimate breath of fresh air. After all those frontier movies, after all of those badly acted, poorly paced films, this is a lot of fun, and it's something different, and it's something that I enjoy, and they don't do a good job of representing that in the title, and they don't seem to really market it that well, because this was another film that I thought I was not going to be able to find. Aside from this VHS rip, it's pretty hard to find a copy. Like, you can't even... I don't think they even have a copy, like, in the Disney Classics stuff, because we found, like, the 1959 Shaggy Dog and whatnot on DVD. I don't think they ever brought this back.
Yeah, they haven't, which is really surprising. Like, I'm trying to think of why they wouldn't try to, promote this more. Like, I guess maybe because, it's in Switzerland and maybe there was some things in it that was offensive to Swiss people. I mean, I'm not Swiss, so I can't tell. But I mean, I didn't see anything offensive in this, and I mean, granted, it's not the best movie for kids. They wouldn't really be into this unless they were really interested in mountain climbing. But I mean, it still deserves to be recognized more than it is, and it really is a shame, especially since like you said, they do have a ride based on it in Disneyland. So I don't get it. But I mean, hopefully, I don't know, maybe in the future they'll think to at least release this on like, a collector's package or something, at the very least.
We can hope. I mean, they're starting to put out, or maybe they put it out before and I never noticed. I'm seeing online like Disney Classic packs where they put together a bunch of different films from like the same vein. Like they had a few different dog related films in a pack along with the 2 Shaggy Dogs and stuff like that. But they really should bring back a lot of these VHS movies that they had, because going through a lot of them, well, some of the frontier stuff isn't as good. They really should just have a pack of all these films where people can take a look back, because I gotta be honest, like, I've been spending a lot of time just finding these films to watch. There's not really a lot of good quality VHSs out there, and I don't have a VHS player. So it's very hard to find a copy of some of these films legitimately and even illegitimately. Like, searching, some of these films just don't have a lot of love, so they're barely there. Like, I just barely managed to find them, and it's a shame because as a historical venture, some of these films may be not as good as others, but they're worth a watch, and they're worth looking at for their historic value to Disney alone.
Yeah, I mean, and they even have, well-known actors in it as well, plus, Disney alumni who've been in multiple things. You think, given that a lot of them got, honorary stars and stuff, they'd try to preserve some of the older films, like at least, not just on VHS, at least, have a basic DVD format. It's just, it really is a shame. Because, like I said, this is one of the better stuff we have, and unlike the Frontier films, it actually holds up. So, I don't know. I mean, here's hoping one day we'll get a proper, like, Disney collection of, like, all the official releases, and then, proper context is added to each of them just to keep them culturally relevant. I feel that would be the best course, especially, for the lesser known films that are good but get buried beneath all the other much more promoted animated stuff. And that's what I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Disney did much better in their animated library at this point, but some of these films are worth a watch. And I don't regret seeing most of the films we've seen before, aside from Savage Sam.
Yeah, that deserves to be buried within the sands of time. I think we can agree upon that.
Yeah. Um. So I think it's time to wrap it up. Final thoughts?
Um, I like this movie, and I do recommend it. Like it's beautifully shot. It's well acted. If you're really into mountain climbing, like, and you don't want to see dozens of people die gruesome deaths, this is definitely the good film to watch. It definitely has merit, and I'm surprised that it's not more popular than than it is. So yeah, definitely, if you can somehow track it down, I do recommend watching it.
I agree. This film has its problems, like we said, but it's miles better than the Frontier films that we saw earlier. And it doesn't have the cheesiness that Davy Crockett had, but what it does have is very well acting, very well shot mountain climbing. Like it does a lot of things right, and I believe that it should have more attention placed upon it because while I won't say it's a masterpiece, it's a film in the 50s that is well above what had come out in the 50s at the same time. And I think it deserves praise for that. It does so much more, so much better than those films that we've talked about already. And unfortunately, it's forgotten. This is one of the forgotten Disney films, and it does not deserve to be forgotten. Anyway, with all of that being said, next time we're going to touch upon the Shaggy Dog.
And its abundance of spin-offs. So we will be
Yes.
on this for a while, and once we do, this will have officially wrapped up the 50s.
Yes. So we're going to start our Shaggy Dog Month, as we're calling it. It's probably going to take 2 months to cover all of the Shaggy Dog films that we have found. But yeah, that's going to be the Shaggy Dog Month, and then we're going to wrap things up. We look forward to covering all these Shaggy Dog films because I've never seen any of them, and they're supposedly classics.
Yeah, I mean, it spawned God knows how many films, so it must be a classic. I definitely look forward to watching it, and I look forward to watching dogs driving cars, because that's always funny.
With that being said, I am Zenith Rule,
And I'm Kat McBerry.
and we will see you next time for some shaggy dogs and some shaggy DAs and whatnot.
And remember, folks, climb every mountain, ford every stream, and follow every rainbow till you find your dream. That wasn't Disney, but I'm quoting it anyway.
And also remember that if you go to Disneyland, go to the Matterhorn because it is really fun.
I shall one day if I ever get to the West Coast. Until then, TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.